The recently released Carnegie report, Educating Lawyers, uses this paradigm of 3 apprenticeships of the professional. One is the intellectual or cognitive apprenticeship. The second is the practical apprenticeship or skills-based apprenticeship. And the third is the ethical or normative apprenticeship. And they use the metaphor of head, hands, and heart. And so what we're trying to do at Mercer, and I think what legal education more and more is trying to do, is incorporate all 3 of those aspects of being a professional, and to do it from the beginning of one's time as a law student, and integrate that fully throughout the 3 years. There's a challenge to doing that, and traditionally legal education has not done that. It's focused for many, many years almost exclusively on the intellectual or cognitive apprenticeship, taking the paradigm of teaching students to think like a lawyer and sort of assuming that everything else would be learned along the way. About 20 years ago, we began to pay more attention to the practical or skills apprenticeship, and legal education has come a long way in incorporating that. But the challenge really now is that 3rd apprenticeship, which can be called the apprenticeship of identity, or of ethics and values, and that is to integrate from the beginning of legal education, teaching students that who they are matters, that who they are when they come to law school matters, and that what they're doing is not replacing who they are with their new identity as lawyers, but rather integrating or layering on their new skills and knowledge as lawyers, incorporating that with who they are and what their goals and desires are. I'm actually very optimistic about the students who come to us, and I think that most people choose law school because they want their work to matter. They want their lives to make a difference. They see the law as something that is oriented towards others and that is focused on problem solving and helping people through difficult times. They may not be able to articulate that very clearly when they come to us, but I think that most of them have that in common, that draws them to law school. And unfortunately, when they get in law school, and particularly the first-year curriculum is so focused on analysis and reasoning and the intellect, that often that really important piece of the heart that brought them to law school is ignored in the first year. And they get the message, which I think is an inaccurate message, that it doesn't matter. And I think that's one reason that many of them report losing some sense of themselves or some sense of purpose in the first year of law school. The really sad part is that it does matter, and that it matters a lot for being a good lawyer, and that we just need to make sure that in law school that they understand that it matters and that they realize they can hold on to that particular purpose and fulfill it as a lawyer. So I'm optimistic that so many movements in the profession and in legal education are getting us to a point where I think students' experiences in law school in the future will be different than they were in the past, and that they'll learn that lesson. I guess, you know, one of the things that I think we need to be doing as a profession is having practitioners working more closely with legal education around some of these issues. I think that's improved in recent years. We do have more practice intersecting with academia than was the case 20, 30 years ago. But I think it's very important for students to hear from practitioners about what their lives are like, because there's still a lot of mystery out there. A lot of students don't know lawyers when they come to law school, or they don't know them well. And as a part of developing their own professional identity, those models are very important. And we can do it in a number of ways. We can do it by having people teach courses. We can do it by having practitioners just come in as guest speakers. The retreat that I mentioned before and the course that I taught was great because we just spent a whole day with a variety of professionals. In fact, one of my favorite stories out of that was that we were at a retreat and we had a speaker who was a federal judge who told the story of making a mistake, a pretty serious mistake, at one point in his law practice. And he explained the way in which he went about correcting that mistake and making everybody whole. at the end. And we had a great discussion with the students and the professionals in the room about what happens when you make a mistake. That as professionals, we are dealing with very difficult situations. That part of what we do is make decisions in a climate of inherent uncertainty, and therefore you sometimes will make a mistake. And it was a great discussion. And at the end of the day, one of the students came to me and he says, you know, Professor Floyd, he says, you really need to tell the first years about this mistake thing. Because he says, we don't think we can make mistakes. And, you know, that amazed me because, of course, those of us in the room who were older knew that you were going to make mistakes in your life. But we realized that one of the messages that we send to young lawyers is that you have to be perfect. And nobody's perfect. And so there were a lot of unexpected lessons that were learned by putting practitioners, professionals with some experience into conversation with students. Students were able to talk about their doubts and their fears and learn that those are part of being a professional, that it didn't reveal a weakness, that it revealed the nature of being a professional, which is it's very difficult and you work under difficult circumstances. And so I think that we really do need to find more and more ways to bring professionals in to legal education. In the first year legal profession course that we teach at Mercer, the students are required in groups to interview a local lawyer. And many of them report on that being one of the most positive experiences of their first year because they hear those lawyers talk about their careers and they hear lawyers talking about how meaningful it is to make a difference in clients' lives and to be helpful to clients. And that's a side of the practice of law that students have not seen up until that point in law school. And really hearing about it from someone who's experienced it is very positive for them. So I think that's one of the things that we need to do more of. We can do it through biographies too, through having students read biographies, to learning about you know, the lawyers who've made a difference in the development of the country and in the lives of their clients. And so I think that's one of the things we need to do, is bring more lawyers as well as more clients into legal education.